Hello and welcome one more time to my YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe, turn on notifications, press all the buttons, do all that stuff. And welcome. If you've watched any of the videos on my channel, you'll see that quite often I do videos where I'm rewiring a guitar, or I'm installing pickups, or I'm doing something to do with the electronics of a guitar. I get asked loads of questions, and I thought maybe I'd do a little video today to try and address some of those. A question I get asked more than any other is about soldering. Before I get into this, I just wanted to cover off the sort of tools that you might want to have if you're going to get involved in rewiring guitars, soldering guitars. Okay, so the first and the biggie, really, is a soldering iron. So I have this one. This is quite a fancy one. This is a Hakko FX888D. Yes, it's very fancy. It's a temperature controlled digital soldering workstation thing. But I, for years, used a 15, 20, 25 pound soldering iron soldering station. The most important factor is that you have a soldering iron that you can control the temperature of. So make sure if you're going to get soldering iron, get one that's at least got a temperature control on it, so you know what temperature it's running at. Make sure you get one where you can change the solder tip, but really you want to be using something like this. Let's see if I can get that in focus. Can you see? It's kind of, it's like a ballpoint pen almost, but it's quite pointy and it's round. I find these to be the best type of solder tips to be doing any kind of electronics work, whether that's soldering guitar pedals, circuit boards, or doing wiring on guitars. And my technique, my philosophy with soldering is that the hotter the better, because you can get in and out quicker. That way, you reduce the risk of damaging components by having to apply heat for too long. I aim around about 440 degrees. You might not want to go that high, you might want to come down 20, 30, 40 degrees. But I wouldn't recommend going below sort of 400. Too low a temperature, and like I say, you're going to have to apply your soldering iron to any particular component for far too long. Long exposure to that level of heat can damage some components. And use the right shaped tip that helps you get the heat applied to a nice small area as quickly as it can. The next thing I want to talk about is just dealing with parts. My approach always comes down to two stages with any components. First is to prepare the stuff, prepare the surface, prepare the area that you want to make a connection in. You might have come across the phrase tinning before. What that is applying a bit of solder to something before you make a connection to it. So this is the two stages of soldering. Sorry, I'm a bit gassy today. I've had a banana for breakfast. Let me just say as well, get one of these. These are called helping hands, and they're brilliant. Sometimes they have a magnifying glass on top so you can see better. All right, anyway, solder. Do you know what? Solder's much of a muchness to me. Some people say there's really good quality solder and high quality solder. I'm not too fussy, I'll be honest with you. I typically go for quite a thin gauge because it flows faster, it flows quicker. But I always go for 60-40 flux core solder. And yeah, cheap shit off Amazon will do your job. So when I'm soldering, I always pull out a little piece like this, and I just chop a little bit off with my soldering iron. Prepare your soldering iron as well, tin it a little bit, pop a little bit of solder just on the tip there, and then give it a clean off, so you've got a nice clean tip ready to go. And then yeah, I was talking about preparing all these little points before I do anything. So I will go around them all and I'll just put a bit of heat and apply a little bit of solder. There we go, and there we go, a bit more. And you can see I'm working really fast. I'm putting the heat in there and I'm getting the solder in, and then I'm just coming away good and fast. I'm looking around. There we go. So we've just tinned all the terminals on that piece in just a few seconds, and we're done with it. is now ready to connect a wire to. So let me see, if I got a piece of wire somewhere, let me see if I can find a piece of wire. Alright, so I've got some wire here. This is vintage cloth covered style wire. I love this stuff because first off, it's pre-tinned, and secondly, you can just pull the shield back, pull the cable shield back like that and expose a piece. Here's another tool you're going to want, some sort of needly nosy type pliers. I like these little round ended ones because you just need to grab things occasionally. And so I'm going to grab this bit of wire and I'm just going to pull back the sleeve, and can you see I've revealed the wire that I want to work on. So I want to make a connection now to my switch. I've got my wire ready. I'm just going to go in there, I'm going to apply my heat and let this, I can see the solder go, and I'm just going to feed my little cable in there and let go with the soldering iron and give it a little wiggle until it just goes solid and cools down enough that that cable is now in there, absolutely rock solid. And you can see there it's, you know, a little bit poking through the other side, but that is an absolutely rock solid connection now, and I can just push that little bit of sleeve back down there and look at that. I've got a perfect connection to that point. And you know what, I don't want to go too far into doing any more soldering around different parts of the guitar, because whether it's a tone pot and you're soldering these little tabs here and putting wires in there or anything like that, the process is exactly the same. Okay, so something else I wanted to talk about is something else I find a lot of guys who are just getting into this sort of thing struggle with, and that is understanding how you ground a guitar properly. You might have a problem with a guitar that's crackling, making noise, there's a lot of hum coming from somewhere, and or you know, you're turning a pot and it's crackling, or you're tapping something somewhere and it's microphonic, and it's typically, those sorts of issues are typically down to the fact that something somewhere is not grounded properly. And understanding what should and shouldn't be grounded in a guitar is actually probably simpler than you might think. I tend to think of what's going on with the electronics inside a guitar as two sides, and it all swings around the pickups. On one side of your pickups you have everything grounded, on the other side of your pickups you have the signal, the actual hot signal going out. You'd want to join things to the ground side where you don't want any noise, if that makes sense. Where you do want noise, you want that to go to where you want that to follow the output signal path from the pickups through the switch, through the volume pots to the output of the guitar, and so on. But on the other side of the pickups, you've got that going to ground, and you've got that going to the ground connection on the jack of the guitar. Other things that connect to the ground, typically you want to ground all your pots, you want to ground your switches, you want to ground the bridge of the guitar, you want anything that you don't want to make noise, you want connected to ground. Does that make sense? And this is also why you connect tone pots through a capacitor to ground, so you can apply a certain amount of signal to ground, which means you're losing some signal to ground. But if you put a capacitor or a resistor in front, then you're going to be retaining some of that signal. Not all of it is going to be getting passed through to ground. Does that make sense too? Am I still making sense? So think about it this way. You've got the pickups where the noise is generated, the magnets where they pick up the vibrations of the strings, yes? And inside those pickups, there's a big coil of copper wire. Once they've finished coiling those wires around, they end up with two ends of little wires from all the coils that have gone around the pickups. Now one of those is going to be feeding your signal to output, yeah? And the other one is going to be connected to ground. I mean, again, I'm not sure I'm explaining this well enough or in a way that anyone's going to get it. But yeah, anything you don't want to make noise, you should connect to ground. And your main ground connection is coming in from the jack. So you have to think about this. All your grounds have to connect together. Everything wants to be connected together somehow. That leads me on to one of the other things that physically people tend to struggle with, or I hear that people struggle with a lot, and that is actually making those ground connections in a place that works well inside of a guitar. Now, where that typically is, and I'm going to show you on this one, is on the back of a pot. So you can see here on the back of this pot, we have a ground connection that's been made there, and a couple more ground connections that have been made here. From the jack on the guitar, there's going to be a ground cable coming in and connecting to the back of this pot somewhere. So anything else you connect to the back of this pot is going to be connected to the ground. That goes out through the jack socket of the guitar, into your pedals and your amp and all that stuff. Yeah? The thing is, right, one of the things that people struggle with the most on this is actually soldering something to the back of one of these pots. And it can be quite tricky. It can be quite tricky indeed. So I'm going to show you my technique to do that, because it's such a big surface. You put your soldering iron on there and it seems to just soak up all the heat and doesn't ever get hot enough for you to solder anything to, and you're trying to deal with a piece of wire and some solder and with soldering iron all at the same time, and it can be quite tricky and fiddly, and it feels like you need 3 hands sometimes. But this goes back to what I said earlier. My method about soldering anything is 2 stages. Prepare your surface, get your solder where you need it to be, and then make your connection. So let's have a look at how that works. So let's use this as an example. And you can see already, actually, there's a whole bunch of solder in this little space here, can you see? But nothing connected to it. So let's assume that that's where we're going to connect our ground that goes to our output jack. So here we go, a little black piece of cloth cable. I'm just going to reveal some of the metal on that so I can actually work with it. There we go. Alright, so we can see that. Here we go, look. And I've got my little thing of solder here, see? And my soldering iron. Now I'm going to come in here, and okay, so there's already a bit of solder on there, but I want to flow that solder. I want to get it flowing. So I'm just going to apply my soldering iron. You can see it's starting to melt there, and I'm just going to apply a bit more solder in there to give myself a nice pool to deal with. And there you go, look, a nice big fat pool of solder. Now I've come away from that and that's cooled off and gone hard, but that's okay because we can still work with that solder, no problem. So you can see now I've done away with trying to put any more solder on there. I'm not putting any more solder down there, and I've got 2 free hands again, one for the soldering iron and one for the wire. So I'm going to come back in again and I'm going to reheat this solder until it liquefies again. You can see there it goes. And I'm just going to run it around and get a good liquid thing, and then I'm going to put my cable in there and I'm just going to run a bit of solder over it, let it cool, and whack. There. Look how quick that was. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. We've made our ground connection to the back of our pot. Now yes, it does get a little more complicated if you're trying to connect a few pieces together at the same point, but it's the same technique. Just make sure you're holding the wire with something, or you're clamping it down so it's, you know, the stuff that's already soldered in there is staying in place. So I hope that helps, because I see a lot of people struggle with that one, and it doesn't have to be a struggle at all. It can be really simple, but it comes down to having the right tip on your soldering iron and making sure your soldering iron is hot enough that you can get in there and get done quickly what you need to get done. You saw how fast that solder on the back of that pot melted, and it's because my soldering iron is hot enough. So think about your pickups as the center point for the whole setup, right? One side of your pickups is going to have an output cable, little wire. The other side is going to have a ground wire, and that's going to connect to a ground somewhere that you're then going to connect everything else to that wants to be grounded, that you're then going to connect to the ground to the output of the jack on the guitar. And similarly on the other side, you've got the signal side that wants to go into your switch, and so you can switch between your pickups, do all that, and then that wants to go to your volume pot, which then wants to go to the output of your the jack on the guitar. Similarly as well, if you want to control the tone on the guitar, you send some of that output signal to the tone pot, which then passes that signal through a capacitor to ground. The value of the capacitor will determine how much of that signal is sent to ground and how much is not. And it's that simple, it's that straightforward. So another question I was asked, and I think I'll address in this video because I've been asked it just now, and how does a switch work? What's going on? I tell you what, let me just get rid of this little cable because I don't need it. Alright, so let's talk about this little switch. This is a very typical 5-way blade switch. Now, 3-way blade switch is the same, 5-way super switch is the same, but either way, all these blade switches work exactly the same. What they basically are is 2 switches in one, in opposition to each other. You have 2 sides. Can you see there? Can you see how on one side you've got these terminals, these little points, and on the other side, on the inside, should we call it, you've got exactly the same. If you look, you can kind of see on this side, this little terminal here is connected to this central sort of, you can see this little metal, little sort of scythe shaped thing, which moves as you flick your switch around. Yeah, let's have a look at how that works. So basically this one point here is always connected. Look, it's always touching that little metal part there. So this part of the switch is basically what you would call an output of the switch. Yeah, and then all these other points are going to be the input part of the switch, and as you flick that switch around, you will see it connects various parts. So in this position, it's connecting this part to here. In this position, it's actually connecting these two parts to here. In this position, we've just got this one connected to there. In this position, it's both of these. It's connected to that. And in that last position there, it's just that one there connected to that one there. So what are you sending in? Well, you're sending the signal from your guitar pickups, aren't you? Say you've got a Strat with 3 single coil pickups. You've got those 3 outputs from those pickups. You can connect one to here, one to there, one to there, and then that your output to your volume pot. And as you flick round, you'll have one pickup, and then the top 2 pickups, and then the middle pickup, and then the next 2 pickups, and then just the bottom pickup. Because you've got 2 sides, you can actually do a bit more. And like I say, depends on what you want to do. And the other side, like I say, is in complete opposition to what's happening on that one. So if you could see the other side of this switch, which you can't, inside there, what you would basically have is this blade the complete opposite way around. So as you flick this across, it makes the opposite connections, if that makes sense. And and on the back side, this one is the output. But why do you need the 2 sides? Well, like I say, it's down to a number of different things. You might want to send signal to your tone pots in different ways. But what you would do is you would connect your 2 outputs from one side of the switch to the other, and then you would send various points on the inside of the switch to the different tone pots. Anyway, loads of wiring diagrams, how you can have a look at how that works, but basically that's what's happening. On a blade switch, there's one point that's always connected, and then this little tab, as you flick the switch around, connects one or more of the other tabs. So anyway, let's have a little recap, shall we? This video wasn't really meant to show you how to do a full rewire or anything like that. I just wanted to cover off some of the fundamental points around soldering guitar stuff. There's plenty more to cover off, so if you've got any questions about anything that I've touched on here today, by all means leave a comment. To recap, really, soldering any guitar parts, the important factors to remember is that get a good soldering iron that you can temperature control, run it hot, and get in and out fast. Use the right tip, like that. Get a little sharp, narrow, pointed, round tip that looks like the end of a pencil. Or grounding of a circuit in a guitar. Try and think about it in, like I said, in terms of the pickups being the center point. One side of the pickups is all hot output signal, actual sound coming from the pickups going to the output of the guitar, and you're going to feed that through the switch, you're going to feed that through the volume port, you're going to feed that to the output jack of the guitar, and then the other side of the pickups is the ground, and you're going to connect that side to ground, and you're going to connect everything else that you don't want to make a sound to ground. So that's going to be your pots, your switches, your bridge on your guitar, your trem claws on trem guitars. So think about it like that. Just think about your pickups are the centre of the universe, and all of one side, everything that's happening on one side of them is your signal going out the guitar, and the other side is everything that's connecting to ground. And anything you don't want to make noise, you want to connect it to ground, and all your grounds want to connect together, and they all want to then connect to the output jack of the guitar, the ground on the output jack. So I hope that makes sense. Wish I could find better ways to explain this or show you, but that's as best we can do for now. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Go and check out my pedal giveaway video. We're still hunting our way to 1,000 subs, so if you want to be in with a chance to win that pedal, then leave a comment on that video also. I'll put a little link to it in the top corner here, whichever one. And by the way, forgive my bandaged arm today. I'm struggling with sportsman's injuries, apparently. I actually have tennis elbow in this arm, and this elbow is golfer's elbow. Never played either of those sports in my life, but I have injuries related to them somehow. Anyway, there you go. So thanks for watching, and come again. Bye.